Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back in time, not to a battlefield or a royal court, but to a place far more intimate and, frankly, a lot weirder, a Victorian-era bedroom. We're going to explore a world obsessed with progress, a time when people believed science could solve any problem, including problems that didn't actually exist. Your modern sensibilities, wrapped in cozy cotton sheets and accustomed to minimalist design, might not make it through the first night here. The goal wasn't just to sleep, but to sleep correctly, productively, and morally. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments what city you're in and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these little journeys reach. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background tone, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The world outside your window dissolves. The faint hum of your refrigerator is replaced by the distant clatter of iron miners' shod horses on cobblestones, and the low rumble of a city settling down for the night under a haze of coal smoke. You're standing in the center of your new bedroom, and the air is thick with the scent of beeswax polish, old wood, and something faintly medicinal. Heavy, dark velvet curtains are drawn tight, blocking out the gaslight glow from the street. The furniture is imposing, a hulking wardrobe of dark mahogany, a dressing table cluttered with silver minus-back brushes, and a fireplace, thankfully unlit on this mild evening. But it's the bed that draws your eye, and not just the bed, but the entire ecosystem of contraptions surrounding it. This isn't the sanctuary of rest you're used to. It looks more like a laboratory, or perhaps a workshop dedicated to the highly scientific management of unconsciousness. You see, the Victorians were riding a massive wave of industrial and scientific discovery. They built iron bridges, laid transcontinental railways, and harnessed the power of steam. With this newfound mastery over the physical world, it seemed only logical to apply the same principles of engineering and efficiency to the human body itself. And what is sleep, if not the final, untamed frontier of human experience? A chaotic, unproductive, 8-hour void that desperately needed to be optimized. You take a hesitant step closer. To your left, propped against the wall, is a strange, almost skeletal frame of wooden leather straps. It looks a bit like a piece of gymnastics equipment, or perhaps a rather severe piece of furniture for a very specific, and likely uncomfortable, purpose. On the nightstand, next to a heavy glass pitcher of water, sits a peculiar helmet made of brass and silk, with coiled wires leading to a small, mysterious wooden box. It hums with a barely audible frequency. The pillow on the bed isn't the fluffy cloud you'd hope for. It's lumpy and oddly shaped, with pronounced ridges and valleys, as if it were molded from a topographical map of a small, mountainous country, and draped over the entire bed, suspended from a brass ring on the ceiling, is a heavy canvas tent, complete with a little isinglass window. It's not for keeping mosquitoes out. The windows are sealed shut anyway. This, you'll soon learn, is to protect you from a far more insidious threat, the night air itself. For a long time, before germ theory became widely accepted, many believed that diseases like cholera and influenza were spread by miasma, a kind of toxic, invisible fog that rose from damp ground, especially at night. Opening a window after dark was considered a direct invitation to illness. This fear of bad air was a genuine and pervasive anxiety. So here you are, surrounded by the physical manifestations of a culture's anxieties. Anxiety about health, about social status, about morality, and even about what your own body might get up to while your conscious mind is away. Historians still debate whether this obsession with scientific sleep stemmed from a genuine, if misguided, pursuit of health, or if it was driven by a deeper social compulsion, the middle class's desire to distinguish themselves from the unruly poor by turning even rest into a display of discipline and modern thinking. It wasn't enough to be wealthy. You had to be efficiently and scientifically wealthy, even in your dreams. You reach out and touch the cool, smooth wood of that strange upright frame by the bed. It feels solid, well made, and utterly baffling What problem could this possibly have been designed to solve? You're about to find out. Because as the lady of the house explains, maintaining an elegant and correct posture is just as important in slumber as it is at a royal ball. Your journey into the structured, regulated, and frankly bizarre world of Victorian sleep has just begun, and your first challenge awaits, surviving a night of scientifically minus enforced stillness. That strange wooden and leather frame is, you're told, a pastoral health and nocturnal elegance maintainer. It's quite a mouthful, but the concept is disarmingly simple. A person of quality, your hostess explains with a serene smile, must exhibit self-minus control and grace at all hours. Slouching during the day is a sign of a weak will and poor breeding. So why would you permit yourself such laxity at night? To her, the idea of curling up into a comfortable ball is just one step removed from feral behavior. A civilized body rests in a civilized manner straight, composed, and aligned. So with the help of a maid who seems entirely unfazed by the procedure, you are introduced to your night minus time armature. You stand with your back against it, and it feels cold and unyielding. It's not quite a backboard, it's more articulated, with a section for your spine, and two curved wooden pieces that jut forward to cup your shoulders, pushing them back with insistent pressure. Leather straps, softened with use but still stiff, are looped under your arms and buckled across your chest. It's not tight enough to cause real pain, just a constant, unshakable reminder of its presence. Another strap goes around your waist. The whole apparatus isn't attached to the bed, but designed to be worn, turning your torso into a single, rigid unit. You are then guided, stiffly, to lie down. The process is awkward, a bit like trying to lower a statue onto a mattress. Once you're on your back, the effect is immediate. You can't slump, you can't turn onto your side. Your spine is held in perfect, textbook minus straight alignment. The maid places the lumpy phrenological pillow under your head, its specific bumps and hollows, supposedly cradling the parts of your skull responsible for placid thoughts, while discouraging the regions associated with anxiety. Your head is now also locked in place, facing the ceiling. You are, for all intents and purposes, immobilized, a living sculpture of proper sleep. This obsession with straightness wasn't just a bedtime quirk. It was the backbone, quite literally, of Victorian society. Women were famously encased and coursed to achieve the ideal hourglass figure, their organs rearranged in the process. Men of good standing stood ramrod straight, and children in schools were drilled to sit with their backs never touching the chair. This nocturnal device was simply the logical, if slightly absurd, extension of that daytime discipline. It was a 24-hour commitment to respectability. Now as you lie there, feeling a slight itch begin to form on your nose, you ponder the stranger, less minus disgust beliefs died to sleeping positions. It wasn't all about looking elegant for an invisible audience. Some popular health manuals of the time warned that sleeping on your left side put dangerous pressure on the heart. Sleeping on your stomach was even worse, considered vulgar and animalistic, and was believed to provoke indecent dreams by stimulating the baser parts of the body. The only truly safe and morally upright position was on your back, and your new wooden companion was here to ensure you complied. The academic world still picks apart the motives behind such inventions, while they genuinely rooted in a nascent, albeit flawed, understanding of ergonomics and health, with physicians truly believing this could prevent curvature of the spine or improve digestion. Or was it almost entirely about social theater, a tool for the wealthy to perform their own discipline, to feel in control of every aspect of their lives, even the unconscious ones? The answer is likely a bit of both, a mix of sincere medical belief and profound social anxiety. You try to wiggle your toes, a small act of rebellion. They move freely, at least, but your torso is a prisoner. The gentle creak of the leather with every breath is the only sound you can make. The initial feeling of disciplined uprightness is slowly being replaced by a maddening sense of being trapped. You imagine a stray cat wandering into the room and falling asleep on your chest, and you'd be utterly powerless to move it. As you stare up at the canopy of that bizarre bed-miner's tent, you become acutely aware of the air you're breathing. It feels close and stuffy, Your hostess had mentioned it earlier, hadn't she? Something about the night air being a poisonous vapor, a miasma, and suddenly, the purpose of that heavy canvas contraption hanging over you becomes alarmingly clear. Lying there, thinned by the posture minus correcting frame, you begin to focus on the quality of the air. It's definitely getting warmer, and with every exhale, the space inside this canvas cocoon feels a little more. Yes, the contraption, the one suspended from the ceiling like a strange bell jar, is called an atmospheric purity pavilion, and its job is to save you from the invisible poisons lurking just outside your window. The maid, before she left, had carefully lowered it, ensuring the heavy canvas edges were tucked snugly around the mattress. You are now officially sealed in. This wasn't just some fringe belief. The fear of miasma, or night air, was a deeply entrenched and respectable medical theory for centuries, long before Louis Pasteur proved that tiny, invisible germs were the real culprits. People blamed disease on bad smells. They believed that foul odors rising from swamps, sewage, graveyards, and any kind of decaying matter were literally airborne plagues. At night, when the air was cool and heavy, this miasma was thought to creep along the ground, seeping through keyholes and under doors, carrying with it the seeds of cholera, malaria, which literally means bad air in Italian, and countless other fevers. Closing your window at night wasn't just for warmth or security, it was a life-saving measure. So this tent is your personal fortress against the nocturnal pestilence. It's made of thick, tightly woven canvas, and you can see a small, translucent window sewn into the fabric at eye level. It's not glass, but a thin sheet of mica or isinglass scraped in treated fish bladder, if you must know, allowing a murky, distorted view of your own bedroom, which now looks like a strange aquarium. The whole setup is designed to create a bubble of safe, untainted air for you to breathe while you sleep. The irony, of course, is that while it keeps the imaginary miasma out, it does an excellent job of trapping all the carbon dioxide you're breathing out. You're slowly creating your own personal, very real, pocket of bad air, to add another layer of pseudo-scientific protection. The maid had placed a small, fragrant sachet inside the tent with you. It smells powerfully of dried lavender, rosemary, and something sharp, like camphor. This is a holdover from an even older tradition of using strong, pleasant smells to combat foul and therefore diseased air. Doctors during the plague would fill the beaked masks they wore with aromatic herbs for the same reason. The belief was that the good smells would overpower and neutralize the bad. So now, you lie in a stuffy, self-polluted bubble, perfumed with an anti-plague potpourri, held ramrod draped by a wooden brace. You've never felt so scientifically protected, or so deeply uncomfortable. This is where historical interpretation gets interesting. Academics are still untangling the web of sincere belief, public health policy, and opportunistic marketing that surrounded miasma theory. Was this atmospheric purity pavilion a physician-recommended medical device, prescribed for the frail and susceptible? Or was it a clever piece of furniture sold by canny entrepreneurs who knew how to turn a widespread public fear into a commercial product? Evidence suggests it was a bit of both. Medical journals of the day are filled with articles debating the nature of atmospheric poisons, while newspaper advertisements touted all manner of purifiers, filters, and fumigators for the home, each promising to scrub the air of its invisible dangers. You try to take a deep, calming breath, but the air is too thick with herbs and your own recycled humanity. The feeling of being confined is growing. The posture frame prevents you from curling up, and the tent walls in your world, turning your lavish bed into a stuffy, scented prison. Your mind, seeking any destruction, starts to notice the other, smaller details of your sleeping arrangement. There's a fine, silk cord dangling from the ceiling, passing through a small hole in the tent's canopy. It hangs just a few inches from your hand. It's not connected to a lamp. It doesn't seem to be for adjusting the tent. It just hangs there, ending in a delicate porcelain handle. It seems innocuous, but its purpose is tied to another, even more profound Victorian anxiety. It's an anxiety born from the limitations of their own medical science, with the line between a deep coma and death sometimes being blurry. A terrifying new fear had taken root in the public imagination, being buried alive. And that little chord, you realize with a jolt of unease, is your last line of defense against the ultimate silent horror. It's a safety line, not for this life, but for the one after. Your fingers twitch, wanting to reach out and touch the delicate porcelain handle of that silk cord. It seems so out of place, so dainty in a room full of robust, almost industrial-looking contraptions. This, your hostess had explained with an unnerving calm, is a nocturnal reassurance apparatus. Or, more simply, a safety-bell pull. But it's not for summoning a maid. It's for practice. Because if the worst should happen if you were to fall into a deep, death-like trance and be mistakenly pronounced deceased, you'd need to be prepared. Your muscle memory had to be ready for the real thing. The real cord, of course, would be inside your coffin. This is the world of the safety coffin, one of the most wonderfully morbid and revealing inventions of the era. The fear of being buried alive, or tapophobia, reached a fever pitch in the 19th century, and it wasn't entirely irrational. Medical science was still finding its feet. A doctor might listen for a heartbeat with a brand new, but not always reliable, stethoscope, or hold a cold mirror to the lips to check for breath. But conditions like catalepsy, comas, or certain paralytic seizures could mimic death with terrifying accuracy. Newspapers and popular fiction, most famously the stories of Edgar Allan Poe, were filled with gruesome tales of people waking up in the dark, trapped 6 feet underground. So the inventors got to work. The most common design was simple: a cord placed in the hand of the deceased, running up through the coffin, and a pipe in the earth, and attached to a bell on a small structure above the grave. If you were to wake up, you'd just need to give it a tug. The sound of a frantic, lonely bell ringing out across a silent cemetery would alert the groundskeeper that a clerical error had been made. Some cemeteries in Europe really did install these systems, creating rows of graves that looked like they were equipped for a very macabre butler service. Of course, human ingenuity and paranoia rarely stops at simple. This is where you find the truly cheaper, or bizarre, side of the invention. Why just a bell? What if the watchman is asleep or in the local pub? Some patents filed during this period show much more ambitious systems. There were designs with speaking tubes so you could shout for help. There were complex flag-raising mechanisms. One German inventor, a man named Johann Berger, designed a coffin with a system that would release a flock of birds. My personal favorite, however, is the design that incorporated a pyrotechnic. A sharp tug on the rope wouldn't just ring a bell. It would launch a signal flare or a firework into the sky. It's a rather explosive way to announce you're not quite ready to meet your maker. And here lies a subject of ongoing debate for historians. How widespread was this fear? Really? Was it a genuine society-wide panic that had people demanding better burial technology? Or was it more of a niche anxiety, masterfully stoked by sensationalist writers and then commercially exploited by undertakers and inventors who saw a market in mortality? While the fear was certainly real, for several notable individuals left explicit instructions in their wills for precautions against premature burial, such as having a doctor sever an artery before the funeral. There are truly no credible, documented cases of anyone actually being saved by one of these devices. Most of the time, the bells were rung by the natural shifting and decomposition of the body, leading to a number of awkward exhumations. Lying there, held fast by the posture frame, the connection becomes deeply unsettling. That device is designed to hold you still, just like a coffin. The air inside this purity tent is thick and limited, just as it would be in a sealed box. And now, you're being trained to pull a cord to signal that you're here alive. The harmless absurdity of your situation has curdled into something genuinely unnerving. Every creak of the house, every distant rumble from the street, feels amplified. Your mind, now fixated on confinement and the thin line between sleep and death, begins to feel like the most dangerous place in the room. If only there were a way to control your thoughts, to scientifically manage your dreams and banish these dark anxieties. As if on cue, your eyes drift back to that strange brass minus and minus silk helmet on your nightstand, humming a slow, electric lullaby. That low, persistent hum from the nightstand seems to be calling to you. It's a siren song of promised serenity in a room that has so far offered only rigid, stuffy confinement. Your eyes fix on the object, the brass minus and minus silk helmet. It's called a magnetic dream endure, and you're about to get intimately acquainted with it. With a certain theatrical reverence, the maid lifts the device. The silk lining is surprisingly soft, but the brass framework gives it a disconcerting weight. It's not just a helmet, it's a piece of machinery for your mind. She places it gently over your head. It doesn't buckle on, it just rests there, its weight a tangible presence. Two padded discs press lightly against your temples. The moment it's in place, the humming becomes more personal, a vibration you can feel in the bones of your skull. The wooden box it's attached to, you learn, contains a weak, electromagnetic coil powered by a voltaic pile, an early form of battery. The science behind it is a direct descendant of one of the most sensational and controversial theories of the late 18th and 19th centuries: animal magnetism, or mesmerism. The mainstream historical knowledge here is fascinating. Dr. Franz Mesmer proposed that a universal, invisible fluid animal magnetism flowed through all living things. He believed that illnesses, both physical and psychological, were caused by blockages in this fluid's flow within the body. A magnetizer like himself could manipulate this fluid, often by making passes with his hands or using actual magnets, to restore harmony and cure the patient. His sessions were theatrical, often involving groups of people holding hands around a tub of magnetized water, and they produced dramatic results: fits, trances, and seemingly miraculous cures. While the scientific establishment ultimately dismissed his fluid theory, Mesmer had stumbled upon something very real: the power of suggestion and hypnosis. This dream endure is mesmerism simplified and commercialized for the bedroom. The logic, if you can call it that, is that the gentle electromagnetic field it generates will soothe the magnetic fluids in your brain, realigning your neural pathways toward pleasant thoughts. It promises to guide your slumbering mind away from the dark alleys of anxiety, like, say, being buried alive and towards serene, pastoral landscapes. It's meant to be a shepherd for your dreams. This is where you get into the wonderfully bizarre specifics. Many of these devices weren't just about promoting good dreams in general. They claimed a level of precision. Some advertisements for similar magnetic therapies promised to cure specific ailments, while you slept a magnetic belt for indigestion, magnetic insoles for gout. This dream helmet might have come with a small dial, a little piece of pseudoscience flair allowing the user to select the nature of their desired dream. Perhaps setting the dial to 1 encouraged dreams of financial success, while 3 would conjure up a romantic waltz. It's a funny thought, a machine that lets you choose your dreams like you're ordering dinner. A lesser minus known tidbit is that some practitioners of medical electricity believe that not only the device, but the orientation of the sleeper was crucial. They advise sleeping with your head pointing north, to align with the Earth's natural magnetic field. This helmet was essentially a way to bring your own personal North Pole to bed with you. The academic debate surrounding mesmerism and its offshoots continues to this day. Were Mesmer and his followers cynical charlatans who knowingly duped a gullible public for fame and fortune? Or were they sincere, if misguided, pioneers who were observing a genuine psychological phenomenon, what we now call the placebo effect or hypnotic suggestion, without the vocabulary to understand it? Many historians argue that, despite its fantastical theories, the mesmeric movement paved the way for the development of psychoanalysis and modern psychotherapy by demonstrating that the mind could profoundly affect the body and that talking cures or trance-like states could have therapeutic effects. Lying there, you can't say you feel your magnetic fluids being realigned. The humming is a distraction. The pressure on your temples is annoying. And your anxiety about being trapped is certainly not being replaced by visions of bucolic bliss. You try to conjure a peaceful image, a quiet stream or a sunny field, But the intrusive reality of your situation, the rigid frame, the stuffy air, the low buzz keeps breaking through. The machine isn't guiding your dreams. It's just giving your wakeful brain one more thing to fixate on. You realize the futility of it. This helmet is designed to bring good dreams, but it does nothing to stop the bad ones from forming in the first place. It's a treatment, not a prevention. As this thought solidifies, your attention shifts to the object that has been uncomfortably cradling your head this whole time. The lumpy, strangely contoured pillow. You were told its shape was based on the science of phrenology, and its purpose was far more fundamental than just comfort. It wasn't designed to encourage good dreams, but to physically prevent the part of your brain that creates nightmares from ever activating. The helmet buzzes with empty promises, but the thing your head is actually resting on feels far more direct in its approach. This pillow is not your friend. It's hard, lumpy, and unforgiving. Forget memory foam. This is more like memory rock. You shift your head slightly, a minuscule movement permitted by the posture frame, and a particularly aggressive lump digs into the base of your skull. This isn't just a badly stuffed pillow. Every bump, every ridge, every valley has been put there with scientific purpose. This is a phenological corrective headrest, and it's designed to fight your nightmares before they even begin. To understand this pillow, you have to understand the wildly popular and wildly incorrect science of phrenology, developed by German physician Franz Joseph Gall in the late 18th century. Phrenology was built on a seemingly logical idea the brain is the organ of the mind. So far, so good, but Gall went further, proposing that the brain wasn't one single entity, but a collection of distinct mental organs, each responsible for a personality trait like cautiousness, benevolence, destructiveness, or love of offspring. The more developed a particular organ, the stronger that trait would be in the person. And here's the crucial leap of faith: he claimed that the skull hardened over the brain. So the topography of your head, its unique landscape of bumps and plains, was a direct map of your character. For much of the 19th century, this was treated as legitimate science. People would visit a phenologist to have their heads read to get advice on everything from choosing a career to selecting a spouse. A man with a prominent acquisitiveness bump might be a natural businessman, while a woman with a large philoprogenitiveness love of children organ was deemed a perfect future mother. A neat, hoarded, and reassuringly physical explanation for the chaos of human personality. And that brings us back to the rock-hard pillow currently indenting your scalp. Its design is a masterpiece of applied phrenology. The gentle, cradling hollows are shaped to support the areas of the skull associated with desirable traits for sleep veneration, hope, and conscience. Meanwhile, the hard, aggressive ridges are positioned to press against, and therefore suppress, the troublesome organs. That sharp lump digging into the back of your head is likely targeting your combativeness or destructiveness faculties, the supposed neurological wellsprings of violent nightmares. It's a form of cranial gardening, attempting to cultivate good thoughts while stamping out the bad ones. It's not trying to give you comfort. It's trying to physically bully your brain into behaving itself. Here's a curious detail. You might not know phrenology wasn't just a power game or a tool for personal improvement. It was used in some of the darker corners of society, particularly in criminology. Some phrenologists claimed they could identify a criminal type by their head shape alone. A low, sloping forehead supposedly indicated weak reasoning faculties, while a thick neck and prominent bumps behind the ears signaled animalistic aggression. This pillow, then, in its own small way, is part of that same belief system. It's not just preventing a bad dream about falling. It's applying pressure to the very parts of your brain that, if left unchecked, might lead you down a path of moral decay. The academic world, of course, has thoroughly debunked phrenology. The shape of your skull has no bearing on your personality. Yet, historians are still fascinated by it and debate its legacy. Was it simply a ridiculous pseudoscience that reinforced existing social prejudices? Absolutely, but some argue that, in its own clumsy way, it was a vital step toward modern neuroscience. The core idea that specific mental functions are localized to specific regions of the brain, known as localization of function, is a foundational principle of neurology today. Phrenology got all the details catastrophically wrong, but it nudged science to start thinking about the brain in the right way. It was a wrong answer to a very good question. Lying there, you can confirm one thing: the pillow is a complete failure. The constant, focused pressure isn't suppressing your destructiveness organ. It's giving you a headache, far from preventing nightmares. The sheer physical discomfort seems like the perfect recipe for inducing them. You yearn for the sweet relief of morning, for the moment when this nightly ordeal of scientific self-improvement will finally end. But then a new thought arises, a fresh wave of anxiety. How, exactly, do you wake up from this state of engineered paralysis? Surely it doesn't involve a gentle, melodical urn. In a world this obsessed with machinery and forceful solutions, the device designed to pull you from your slumber is probably not subtle. It's likely to be a monster. Your fears, it turns out, were not unfounded. In a room so dedicated to the forceful management of your unconscious hours, the transition back to wakefulness is not a gentle ascent, but a mechanical eviction. Bolted to the wall near your bed is the machine you instinctively knew was a monster. It's a large, brass-faced clock, but its purpose is far more ambitious than simply telling time. Below the clock face, a series of gears, levers, and pulleys connect directly to the frame of your bed. This is not a standalone alarm. This is an integrated system, an ejection system. The primary knowledge here is that the Industrial Revolution had a profound effect on the concept of time itself. Before factories and railways, time for most people was governed by the sun and the seasons. It was organic, cyclical, and relatively fluid. But the new world of industry ran on a different clock, a precise, unforgiving, mechanical one. Factory whistles blew at exact hours. Trains departed at exact minutes. Punctuality was no longer just a courtesy. It became a core tenet of the modern work ethic, a moral virtue signifying diligence, reliability, and self-control. Laziness, embodied by the act of lingering in bed, was seen as a sin against progress. This machine before you is a mechanical sermon on the gospel of work. It is, in essence, an automatic, human-stomping bed, patented in 1882 by a man named Samuel S. Applegate. It was marketed as the patent mechanical besta for effectually arousing the slothful. The process is brutally simple. At the pre-set time, let's say 6 sharp, a series of events is triggered. First, a small, shrill bell might ring, a brief, final warning, a moment of grace. If this warning is not heeded by you getting up and manually disengaging the device, the main act begins. A heavy weight, held in check all night, is released through the system of levers. This action unlocks the hinges on one side of your bed frame. The entire mattress, with you on it, begins to tilt, slowly at first, then with gathering, inexorable momentum. Your world tips sideways. The posture frame makes you a rigid plank, the phrenology pillow a useless rock. You don't tumble in a heap. You slide, a single, stiff unit, off the mattress and onto the cold, hard floor. It's not a violent launch, but a firm, non-negotiable deposit. You land with a muffled thud, a tangle of limbs, bedding, and scientific contraptions. You are, without question, awake. You have been efficiently, if not elegantly, decanted from your slumber. If you think this is extreme, you should know that the Victorian inventive spirit didn't stop here when it came to forced awakenings. This bed-dipper is just one of a whole family of aggressive alarms. Another patent from the era featured a clock connected to an apparatus that would dangle a series of small, wooden blocks over the sleeper's head. At the appointed time, it would release them one by one, creating an increasingly annoying rap on your forehead. An even crueler French invention, the aquatic alarm, was designed to douse the sleeper with a basin of cold water, a rude baptism into the industrial age. The bed-dipping model seemed almost merciful in comparison. Historians and sociologists are still fascinated by these devices, and they debate their actual place in society. Were these inventions a genuine response to a real -world problem of incorrigible over-sleepers in a time-sensitive world? Or were they more like symbolic artifacts, physical representations of an ideal of productivity that few people actually implemented so literally? Evidence for their widespread use is scarce. You couldn't just buy one at the local furniture store. They were more likely curiosities showcased at world fairs and exhibitions, praised in magazines as marvels of ingenuity, but rarely installed in the home. They were less a common household item and more a testament to the belief that if a problem existed, a machine could, and should, be built to solve it. As you lie on the floor, blinking in the new day, the absurdity of the last 8 hours washes over you. You were strapped straight, sealed in a tent, mesmerized by magnets, head sculpted by a pillow, and then unceremoniously dumped on the floor. Every aspect of your rest was managed, corrected, and enforced. As you begin the awkward process of untangling yourself from the posture frame, you notice the clothes that have been laid out for you on a nearby chair. They are your day clothes, but even from here you can see they are just as structured and confining as your sleepwear. It seems the Victorian obsession with controlling the body and its perceived moral frailties doesn't end at sunrise. It just changes its outfit, and you notice a particular piece of clothing, a sort of full body undergarment, that looks suspiciously well. As you're clumsily attempting to unbuckle the posture frame, a light knock precedes the entry of your hostess. She takes in the scene you on the floor, the tilted bed, the general disarray with an expression of mild concern, as if you've merely spilled some tea. But a successful rousing. I see, she says cheerfully, but I do apologize. It seems we overlooked a crucial piece of your nocturnal equipment last night. A simple oversight, but one that could have had moral consequences. Her eyes flick towards a strange garment draped over a nearby chair, one you hadn't paid much attention to before. It's not daywear. It's a full body pajama suit, but it's unlike any you've ever seen. This, she explains, is the Guardian's suit of moral fortitude. It's a formidable looking piece of sleepwear, crafted from a stiff, uninviting canvas like cotton. It features a complex array of straps, buckles, and reinforced seams, but the most arresting feature, the one that makes your stomach clench, is a rigid, cage-like structure made of leather and perforated metal, securely stitched and riveted over the pelvic region. A small, but very definite, lock is attached to it. You are looking at the physical embodiment of one of the 19th century's most pervasive and damaging moral panics. The mainstream historical knowledge here is that Victorian society, particularly in England and America, was gripped by a terror of self-abuse. The secrets in, or onanism, masturbation, far from being considered a normal part of human development, was medicalized and demonized to an astonishing degree. An avalanche of pamphlets, medical treatises, and advice manuals warned that this private act was the root cause of a horrifying catalogue of ailments: epilepsy, blindness, heart disease, memory loss, impotence, and, most terrifyingly of all, insanity. Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, the very same man who famously invented cornflakes, was a fervent crusader against it, believing that a bland diet could curb sexual urges. His original cornflakes were deliberately unsweetened for this very purpose. This Guardian suit was the last line of defense when a bland diet and a disciplined mind failed. It was preventative medicine you could wear. The suit was designed to make physical self-stimulation impossible, locking away the body's perceived weaknesses. It was primarily aimed at adolescents, with parents being the target market. Advertisements would appeal to a mother's sense of duty, urging her to protect her son from the path to ruin by investing in one of these night-time protectors. If a simple, locked cage seems extreme, you should know that the Victorian inventive mind went even further, into the realm of punitive technology. This is where the truly bizarre designs emerged. Some anti-masturbation devices were not merely preventative. but also functioned as alarm system. A common invention was the penile ring. It was a metal ring, worn at night, that was hinged. If an erection occurred, the ring would expand, closing an electrical circuit connected to a battery in the loud bell. The sleeper would be instantly woken by the clamor jolt of shame and fear designed to condition the body against its own natural functions. It wasn't just a physical barrier. It was a psychological weapon. Historians are still untangling the complex web of motivations behind this crusade. Was it a genuine, though tragically misguided, attempt to address perceived public health issues based on the flawed medical science of the day? Or was it, as many scholars argue, a powerful to love social control, a way for a society obsessed with order and productivity to police the inner lives and burgeoning sexuality of its youth, ensuring they grew into docile, disciplined workers and citizens? The psychological damage inflicted by this institutionalized shame is incalculable, and its echoes can still be found in many modern anxieties surrounding sexuality. Your hostess pats the guardian suit fondly. It provides peace of mind, she says, knowing that, while the conscious mind sleeps, the physical self is not left to its own base instincts. The implication is chilling. You are not to be trusted. Your own body is a rogue agent that must be caged and monitored. The posture frame controlled your skeleton. The tent controlled your breathing. The helmet your mind. And now this suit will control your urges. Every involuntary aspect of your being is being systematically brought under mechanical authority. A new thought occurs to you. What if your body has other unconscious plans? What if, despite all this, it decides to just get up and walk away? You must have a look of concern on your face, because your hostess smiles knowingly. Don't you worry, she says, gesturing towards the bedroom door. We have a solution for that. 2. The guardian suit lies there, a monument to moral anxiety. But your hostess has already moved on to the next potential nocturnal failing: somnambulism or sleepwalking. To you, it might seem like a rare and relatively harmless curiosity. To the Victorian mind, obsessed with order and control, it was a terrifying prospect. A sleepwalker was a person whose body had gone rogue, an automaton wandering into the night without the guidance of a conscious, rational mind, who knew what dangers they might encounter, or what social embarrassments they might cause. An individual unconsciously roaming the streets in their night clothes was the ultimate loss of self minus possession. One must be careful, your hostess says, her voice hushed with manufactured gravity. The sleeping mind is a suggestible thing. A vivid dream of a walk in the park could have you halfway down the street before you know it. She then directs your attention to something you hadn't noticed before, a series of small, almost invisible modifications to the room itself. You'll see, the solution wasn't another device to wear, but an environment designed to be a trap for the unconscious self. She points to the floor near the bedroom door. There, running from one wall to the other, is a thin, taut piece of black thread, suspended about 3 inches off the ground. It's a tripwire, but this isn't some crude booby trap. It's part of an elegant, if paranoid, system. Following the thread with your eyes, you see it passes through a tiny brass eyelet screwed into the door jamb, then runs up the wall to a small, polished wooden box mounted near the ceiling. It's a clockwork alarm. Tripping the wire would release a spring mine, a slotted mechanism inside, causing a series of loud, frantic bells to clang enough to wake not just you, but likely the entire household and perhaps the neighbors as well. It's a public announcement of your transgression. This is a prime example of applying engineering to a domestic problem. The Victorians were master mechanics, and the idea of creating a system of triggers, pulleys, and alarms was second nature. This kind of setup, while perhaps not commonplace, fits perfectly within the era's inventive spirit. If you can rig a factory with bells to signal shift changes, why not rig your bedroom to signal an unscheduled departure? Now, here's a lesser-minus known tidbit about the fear of sleepwalking. It was just about the physical danger of falling downstairs or wandering into traffic. For some, it was connected to the burgeoning interest in psychology and the supernatural. Sleepwalking, like hypnotism, was seen as a state where the soul was vulnerable, whether hidden, darker parts of the personality adhered, though they didn't have that word yet could come to the fore. There were gothic tales and penny dreadfulless about sleepwalkers committing crimes or uncovering terrible secrets, with no memory of it upon waking. In a society that placed such a high premium on reputation, the thought of your body acting out your darkest subconscious desires was a profound horror. This tripwire was just protecting your body. It was protecting your good name from your own unconscious self. The historical debate around this topic is quite subtle. While sleepwalking was a known phenomenon, how much of this elaborate trapping was practical and how much was performative? Did people genuinely live in fear of nightly excursions? Or was having a sleepwalker trap another way for the upper-middle classes to demonstrate their thoroughness and their commitment to a scientifically managed life? Some historians argue it was a manifestation of a deeper anxiety about the loss of control in an increasingly complex and unpredictable modern world. They were building machines to control their beds, their air, and their dreams because the world outside their bedroom, or a world of teeming cities, rapid industrial change, and social unrest was becoming harder and harder to control. You look at the tripwire, then at the alarm box on the wall. It's a clever system, but as you stand there, you become aware of another sound, one you deep in subconsciously filtering out the gentle, rhythmic patter of rain starting to fall outside. In your modern life, that sound is a soothing balm, a natural white noise machine. But here, in this house of manufactured solutions, even the soundscape is something to be managed and improved. Your hostess notices you listening. The rain, she says, dreadfully inconsistent, isn't it? Sometimes too loud, sometimes too quiet, and it does little to block out the dreadful clatter of the early morning milk cart. She gestures to a series of polished copper pipes running along the ceiling, disappearing into the walls. Don't worry, she says with a confident smile. We have a device for that. You follow her gesture to the copper pipes running near the ceiling. They're not just pipes. They're a work of art, polished to a warm glow, with joints so perfect they seem to have grown that way. It looks as though a piece of a magnificent church, organ, or a high minus end distillery has been threaded through the very architecture of the house. This, she explains with a level of pride usually reserved for a prized racehorse, is the domestic, oral environment regulator. The concept, she elaborates, is simple and ugly. Chaotic soundscape is detrimental to a refined nervous system. The goal of this apparatus is to take the raw, untamed sounds from the outside world and civilize them before they reach your delicate ears. A large, icon, discreetly placed on the roof, captures the desirable ambient noises in this case. The rain. The sound is then channeled down through a main pipe into a filtering chamber located in the attic. This chamber, a marvel of acoustic engineering, or so she claims, is lined with a carefully calibrated combination of materials thick felt to absorb the jarring high frequencies, horsehair to muffle sudden percussive sounds, and a series of resonating baffles designed to cancel out the low, vulgar rumble of cart wheels on the cobblestones. Once the sound has been scrubbed of its imperfections, it is piped into the bedroom and delivered to you through that elegant copper horn pointing towards the bed. The result? Not the chaotic patter of real rain, but a perfect, unblemished, and utterly consistent sound. It's the platonic ideal of rain, delivered with the reliability of a gas lamp. This taps right into the core of the Victorian industrial mindset. If nature is inefficient, improve it with mechanics. They built greenhouses to control the climate for plants. It only seems logical to build a device to control the soundscape for people. But this is where we get into the more peculiar and specific anxieties. The device wasn't just about filtering out general noise. It was about targeting specific sounds deemed medically harmful. This is a strange little tidbit of medical history. Certain physicians of the era theorized that abrupt, high-pitched noises could directly assault the nervous system, leading to conditions like nervous prostration or exacerbating female hysteria. The sharp squeal of an ungraced axle, the cry of a stray cat, or the sudden shouting of a street vendor. These were not just annoyances. They were considered sonic toxins. This machine was, therefore, a piece of preventative medicine. ensuring the sleeper's nerves were not frayed by acoustical irritants while they were in a vulnerable, unconscious state. The academic debate here doesn't focus on this specific and likely fantastical machine, but on the very nature of the Victorian soundscape. Was the world actually noisier then? Historians argue about this. While industrial cities were certainly filled with the sounds of factories, trains, and dense traffic, the pre-industrial world was not silent. It had the cacophony of animal noises, church bells ringing constantly, and the muffled sounds of manual labor. The shift wasn't necessarily about volume, but about control. The desire for a device like this represents a yearning to replace the unpredictable, organic sounds of life with a curated, predictable, and therefore safe sensory input. It's the audio equivalent of replacing a wild forest with a manicured garden. You close your eyes and listen. The sound emerging from the horn is sterile. It's the ghost of rain. It has the rhythm but none of the soul. There are no sudden flurries as the wind picks up. No heavy drops splashing on the windowsill. It's a perfectly flat, monotonous, soulless patter. A machine-made lullaby. Instead of being soothing, it's profoundly alienating. It's a reminder of how utterly sealed off you are from the real world. Every sight, sound, and sensation is being mediated, filtered, and corrected for your own good. The manufactured rain continues its perfectly paced beat. The sound is so regular it seems to count time, making you think of the clockwork world outside your padded, climate-controlled, and acoustically-regulated cell. You think of the people who have to move through that world, the men and women who must board the clattering, screeching trains for their morning commute. How could anyone find a moment of peace, let alone a quick nap, in that pandemonium? The thought seems impossible, but of course, you realize, in an age that believes there is a machine for every problem, there would have to be an invention for that, too, an apparatus for the specific, modern challenge of sleeping on the move. The very thought of the noisy, jarring reality of a 19th-century train carriage makes this silent, controlled room feel even more like a scientific laboratory. But your host is ever ready to showcase another triumph of inventive problem-solving, nods enthusiastically at your query. Indeed, public slumber is a dreadful challenge. She agrees. To be seen unconscious in a public conveyance, head lolling about, it's terribly undignified. It suggests a lack of fortitude, but necessity, as they say, is the mother of invention. She retrieves a peculiar object from the depths of the hulking mahogany wardrobe. At first glance, it looks like a complex piece of medical bracing, or perhaps an instrument of torture. It's called the commuter's repose, or, more descriptively, the upright napping brace, and it's a masterpiece of portable discomfort. The device consists of a stiff leather harness that straps around your torso and over your shoulders, much like the dreaded posture frame you wore to bed. However, attached to the back of this harness is a rigid, adjustable metal rod. At the top of this rod is a U-shaped clamp, padded with velvet, designed to cradle your chin and the back of your head. The idea is to completely immobilize your head and neck, preventing the undignified nodding off motion that plagues tired travelers. But that's not all. To deal with the violent, side-to-side jolting of the train, two more padded arms extend from the main rod to press firmly against your temples. You are, in effect, strapping your own head into a portable cage. To complete the ensemble, there's a specially designed hat. It looks like a standard bowler hat, but it has a secret. A small, retractable hook is concealed in the brim, designed to latch onto the luggage rack above your seat. This provides a final point of suspension, taking some of the weight off your neck and ensuring that even if you are jostled violently, your head remains perfectly upright, facing forward, giving the illusion of a person who is merely resting their eyes, not succumbing to the vulgarity of deep sleep. This is a classic example of a Victorian solution to a very new, very modern problem. The railway boom of the 19th century created the commuter. For the first time, large numbers of middle-class clerks, merchants, and professionals were traveling significant distances to and from work each day. This created a new social space, the train carriage, with its own unwritten rules of etiquette. Falling asleep was a social faux pas because it was a loss of control. In a carriage full of strangers, you were expected to maintain your public face, to be alert and composed. The snapping brace wasn't just about comfort. It was about performing respectability, even while unconscious. For a truly obscure and wonderful detail, consider the variations. Some designs were even more ambitious. One patent showcases a version with an integrated privacy curtain, a small silk shade that could be unrolled from the hat to cover the sleeper's face, hiding their slack-jawed expression from public view. Another, more complex model, incorporated a small, clockwork-powered fan, also attached to the hat, to provide a gentle breeze on a stuffy summer journey. It's this level of excessive, almost comical, problem-solving that defines the era's inventive spirit. No detail was too small, no potential social embarrassment too minor, to merit its own mechanical solution. Historians often debate the social implications of such devices. Did anyone actually use these things? Like the bed tipping a long clock, evidence for their widespread adoption is minimal. You wouldn't have seen a whole carriage of men silently strapped into their napping braces. Instead, these inventions likely existed more in patent offices and the pages of magazines like Scientific American than on the 8:15 train to London. They were thought experiments made real, symbols of a culture grappling with the strange new social situations modernity was creating. They represented an ideal of perfect self-mastery, even if the reality was a conductor shouting tickets, please, at a carriage full of people slumped uncomfortably against the windows. You picture yourself strapped into this contraption, swaying with the rhythm of the rails, head locked in a velvet-lined vice. It seems designed to prevent sleep rather than enable it. The pressure, the confinement, the sheer self-consciousness of wearing such a thing would be enough to keep you awake. But your hostess seems to interpret your thoughtful silence as a sign of a different kind of feminine fragility. Of course, she says, her voice softening, the stresses of modern travel can be overstimulating for a delicate constitution. All that noise and vibration can be quite trying on the nerves. Sometimes, what a lady needs, before she can even think of resting, is something to soothe her hysteria. And with that, she gestures toward a plush velvet cushion that seems to be vibrating with a gentle, insistent hum. The velvet cushion sits on a chaise lounge in the corner, looking innocent enough, if not for the faint, steady vibration that makes the tassels on its edges dance. A thick, cloth-covered wire snakes from it to a mysterious looking electrical box on the floor. The modern world, your hostess says with a sigh, picking up the cushion, places such a strain on the female nervous system. The clatter, the crowds, the constant expectation of intellectual vigor. It can lead to a lamentable state of nervous exhaustion, or as the physicians call it, hysteria. She presents the vibrating cushion to you as if it were a cure-alt tonic. This is a neuro-therapeutic pulsator, and it's prescribed for relaxation. The mainstream historical context here is both fascinating and deeply uncomfortable. Hysteria was a ubiquitous, catch-all diagnosis in the 19th century, almost exclusively applied to women. The term itself comes from the Greek word for uterus, hysteri, reflecting the ancient belief that a woman's emotional and physical problems originated in her womb, specifically a wandering womb that could travel around her body causing chaos. By the Victorian-era, the theory had been updated, but the prejudice remained. The symptoms of hysteria were incredibly broad, encompassing everything from anxiety, faintness, and irritability to insomnia, fluid retention, and a tendency to cause trouble. Essentially, any woman who deviated from the quiet, submissive, domestic ideal could find herself slapped with this diagnosis. The prescribed treatment was often pelvic massage, performed by a doctor, intended to induce a hysterical paroxysm, what we would now straightforwardly identify as an orgasm. This was considered a legitimate medical procedure, not a sexual act. However, the manual process was laborious and time-consuming for the physicians, and so, driven by a need for efficiency rather than any concern for the patient's experience. Doctors and inventors began to create mechanical solutions. This vibrating cushion is a direct descendant of those early clinic-based devices. The first electromechanical vibrator was invented by a British physician, Dr. Joseph Mortimer Granville, in the 1802, specifically to relieve him of the tedious task of manual massage. Now for the little minus known, and rather ironic, twist. These devices were medicalized to the point of being completely desexualized in the public eye. They were not marketed in seedy back alleys but in mainstream publications like the Sears, Roebuck-Hill catalog, right alongside sewing machines and kitchen appliances. They were sold as respectable health aids for the home. Advertisements touted them as cures for neuralgia, headaches, back pain, and general fatigue. The cushion you're looking at now is a domestic model, designed to be used discreetly in the parlor or bedroom for soothing the nerves. The electrical box it's attached to likely has a rheostat, a dial that allows you to adjust the intensity of the vibrations, from a gentle hum to a vigorous, pulsation. The irony is that in their obsessive effort to police and deny female sexuality, the Victorians accidentally invented and popularized one of the world's most enduring sex toys, marketing it as a cure for the very excitement they fear. The academic debate around this topic is rich and ongoing. Historians like Rachel Maines, in her groundbreaking work The Technology of Orgasm, argue that the invention of the vibrator was a key, if unintentional, moment in the history of women's liberation, allowing women a degree of sexual autonomy, even if it was cloaked in medical legitimacy. Other scholars debate the extent to which this was a purely medical phenomenon versus a wink minus and minus nod situation, where everyone involved quietly understood the device's true function. The evidence suggests that, for the most part, it was presented and accepted with a completely straight face, a testament to the era's powerful ability to compartmentalize in medical, i.e. uncomfortable truths. Your hostess places the humming cushion behind your back. The sensation is bizarre, a deep, mechanical thrumming that vibrates through your bones. It's not unpleasant, but it's certainly not relaxing. It feels less like a gentle massage and more like you're sitting on a piece of industrial machinery. It's another layer of engineered sensation, another attempt to manage the body's frailties with a machine. The current running through the device makes you think of other dangers in a Victorian home, not just frayed nerve, but frayed wires, sparks, and the constant, terrifying threat of fire. In a house lit by gas and candles, with flammable fabrics everywhere, surely they had an invention to protect you from that while you slept. Oh, absolutely, your hostess affirms when you ask. One can't be too careful, and she opens the wardrobe once more. From the cavernous depths of the wardrobe, your hostess extracts another piece of nightwear. At first, it looks like a standard, if rather drab, nightgown and matching cap, made of a heavy, white fabric. But as she holds it up, you notice it has a strained, almost mineral-like sheen to it. The material is stiff, and it moves with an unusual weight, not flowing like cotton or wool, but creasing in sharp, unnatural folds. This is your asbestos lined fire safe sleep ensemble, your personal, wearable fire extinguisher. The primary historical context here is the ever-present danger of fire in the 19th century. Homes were tinderbox. Open flames were the primary source of light and heat. Candles, oil lamps, gas lights, and fireplaces. A stray spark from a hearth, a tipped over candle on a nightstand, or a faulty gas fixture could turn a home into an inferno in minutes. Night clothes, often made of highly flammable cotton or linen, were particularly hazardous. The fear of being trapped by a fire in your sleep was a very real and rational one. So, when a miracle mineral became widely available, a material that literally could not burn, it seemed like the ultimate modern solution. That mineral was asbestos. For centuries, asbestos was known for its fibrous, fire-resistant properties, but it was the Industrial Revolution that unlocked its mass-market potential. It was woven into theater curtains, used to insulate steam pipes, and mixed into building materials. It was hailed as a lifesaver, a triumph of science over one of nature's most destructive forces. Applying it to clothing seemed like the next logical step. Why not wrap yourself in a shield of perfect safety? This sleep suit is a product of that optimistic and tragically misguided era. The fabric is likely a blend, with asbestos fibers woven directly into the cotton or wool, or it might be a double-layered garment, with a soft inner lining and a full outer layer of woven asbestos cloth. It feels heavy, slightly gritty, and not at all breathable. Now for the peculiar and deeply ironic detail. While asbestos was celebrated for its fireproof quality, its other properties were less discussed but still exploited. Some early advertisements for asbestos products touted its ability to be cleaned by fire. An asbestos tablecloth, for instance, could supposedly be tossed into the fireplace to burn off any food stains, emerging pristine. It's not hard to imagine the manufacturer of this sleep suit suggesting a similar, horrifying cleaning method. More importantly, while they were solving the problem of flammability, they were completely oblivious to the microscopic, invisible danger they were embracing. We now know that inhaling asbestos fibers leads to devastating lung diseases like asbestosis and mesothelioma. This fire-safe sleep ensemble was, in fact, a garment that could slowly and silently kill you in a way you couldn't see, all while protecting you from a danger you could. The academic world continues to study the history of asbestos, not just as a medical tragedy, but as a case study in industrial hubris and the complex relationship between technology, commerce, and public health. Historians debate when the dangers truly became known and by whom. While widespread public knowledge is a 20th-century phenomenon, there is evidence that insurance companies and some medical professionals were noting the high rates of lung disease in asbestos miners and factory workers long before the public was alerted. For a long time, the economic benefits and the sheer magic of the material overshadowed the mounting evidence of its deadly nature. This sleep suit is an artifact from that age of innocence, or perhaps willful ignorance. You hold the sleeve of the garment. It feels cold and lifeless. The thought of spending a night wrapped in this stuffy, hazardous material is deeply unappealing. It's the ultimate paradox of this entire experience, a collection of inventions designed to solve problems, each creating a new and often worse problem in its place. A posture frame that causes discomfort, a purity tent that creates bad air, and a fireproof suit that poisons you. You can't help but feel a certain sympathy for the partners of the people who wore these things. Imagine trying to get a good night's sleep next to someone encased in a rigid, fireproof, vibrating, and morally minus-gauged contraption. Then what if they had a problem? What if they snored? Surely, you think with a sense of grim certainty, there was a device for that. 2. Snoring? Your hostess lets out a delicate, musical laugh, as if you've told a particularly witty joke. Oh, my dear, snoring is not a mere annoyance. It is a failure of nocturnal decorum. It is the sound of the body's crude mechanics overriding the serene silence that should accompany a civilized slumber. She glides over to the cluttered dressing table and picks up what looks like a cross between a horse's bit and a piece of dental equipment. It is a contraption of polished steel, leather straps, and a molded rubber mouthpiece. One must not inflict one's bass vibrations upon one's partner, she says, holding up the device. And for that, we have the silence lumber mouth guard. This device tackles a problem that is, for once, very real. Snoring is a timeless and universal issue. That the Victorian approach, naturally, was not to suggest sleeping on one side or addressing the underlying causes like weight or alcohol consumption. Their solution was, as always, mechanical and corrective. The mainstream understanding of the problem was simplistic. They knew the noise came from the throat and mouth. So the solution was to physically clamp the mouth shut and force breathing through the nose. The device she holds is a prime example of this philosophy. You would be expected to place the molded rubber piece inside your mouth, fitting it between your teeth and lips. It acts as a plug. Then, a leather strap attached to one side of the device is wrapped around the back of your head and buckled tightly to the other side. This harness provides the force necessary to keep your jaw clenched shut all night long. The goal is to make mouth-minus breathing a physical impossibility. Some models even included a small, internal tube that was supposed to depress the tongue, preventing it from falling back into the throat. A surprisingly modern concept, but achieved here with brute force rather than sophisticated medical design. You would be, in effect, muzzled for the night. Now for the weird and wonderful variations. The simple jaw-minus strap was just the beginning. The inventive Victorian mind, never content with subtlety, came up with more aggressive solutions. One particular creative patent described a device with a tracheal tickler. This was a small, feathered or bristled component that rested against the soft palate. The theory was that if the sleeper's throat relaxed enough to start his snore, the vibration would cause the tickler to irritate the palate, triggering a cough or a shift in position that would interrupt the snore. It's a bit like trying to fix a noisy engine by installing a smaller, even more annoying engine inside. Another design, which thankfully seems to have remained a patent drawing, involved a chin strap connected by a cord and pulley to the sleeper's own arm. If the jaw dropped open, it would pull on the cord, yanking the arm and hopefully waking the offender. Historians who study the history of medicine technology see these devices as part of a broader trend of medical eyes in common human behaviors. Is snoring a medical problem? Yes, in the case of sleep apnea, it can be. But for the Victorians, it was also a social and moral problem. A man who snored was seen as coarse, animalistic, lacking the self-minus control expected of a gentleman, even in sleep. A woman who snored was practically unthinkable. These devices were not just about ensuring a quiet night. They were about enforcing a certain standard of civilized behavior, about sanding down the rough, noisy edges of human existence. The academic debate might touch on whether this was driven more by emerging medical theories about respiration or by the strict social codes governing marital life in the middle and upper classes. You stare at the mouth guard. It looks painful and claustrophobic. You imagine trying to sleep with your jaw clamped shut, your tongue pinned down, all while strapped to a posture frame and wearing a fireproof suit. It's a vision of pure, scientific misery. The cumulative effect of all these inventions is not a sense of safety or well-minus being, but of total bodily imprisonment. Every natural function, from breathing to dreaming to shifting in your sleep, has been pathologized and put under mechanical restraint. As you contemplate this state of enforced silence, a new thought worms its way into your mind. This entire project is about optimization, about making sleep more efficient, more productive. What if you could take it one step further? What if you could use those 8 hours of unconsciousness for something truly productive, like learning? In an age so obsessed with self-minus improvement, surely someone had tried to turn sleep into study hall. You look around the room, and your eyes land on the strange, wired helmet again. It was for dreams, you were told, but what if it had another, even more ambitious function? Your question hangs in the air, seemingly the most logical, most Victorian question of all. If you can correct posture, purify air, and prevent snores, why wouldn't you use that dormant time for self-minus betterment? Your hostess beams, her expression one of pure delight, as if you have finally grasped the true spirit of the age. But of course, she exclaims, an idle mind is the devil's workshop, even a sleeping one. To waste 8 hours in mere oblivion when one could be absorbing the great works of civilization, it would be a tragic inefficiency. She doesn't introduce a new device. Instead, she walks back to the nightstand and picks up the very same magnetic dream you wore earlier. She turns it over, revealing a small, concealed latch. With a click, she opens a port on the side of the helmet. Its magnetic properties are merely for soothing the cerebral pathways, she explains, preparing the mind to be receptive. Its primary function is far more noble. She then gestures to a handsome wooden cabinet nearby, which you had assumed held books or linens. She opens its doors to reveal not shelves, but the gleaming horn and intricate mechanism of a phonograph. This helmet is not just a dream machine, it's a pair of headphones. This is the hypnopedic cerebral imprinter. The core historical concept here is the immense cultural impact of Thomas Edison's phonograph, invented in 1877. It was a staggering, almost magical invention. For the first time in human history, a sound could be captured and replayed. The voice of a person could outlive them. This technological miracle sparked a wildfire of speculation about its possible uses. And in a society obsessed with self-improvement, the idea of educational application was paramount. The philosophy of men like Samuel Smiles, whose book Self-Help was a runaway bestseller, promoted the idea that any man could achieve greatness through diligence, thrift, and, above all, education. This machine is self-help for the subconscious, the ultimate life hack. The process would be simple. Before bed, the user selects a wax cylinder from their educational library. The choices would be telling, not pop music, but recordings designed to build character and intellect. Perhaps a cylinder of a stentorian, male voice, reciting multiplication tables. Another might feature moralistic poetry by Tennyson, or the proper pronunciation of difficult French phrases for an aspiring diplomat, or the truly ambitious. There might be a cylinder containing the entire list of the kings and queens of England, set to a monotonous beat to aid memorization. The helmet would be donned, the phonograph cranked up, and the needle dropped, all night long, as you lie in your magnetically induced, physically restrained slumber. That disembodied voice would drill information directly into your sleeping brain. Here's the strange, specific detail that makes it so perfectly Victorian. The theory wasn't just about hearing the information. Proponents of these early sleep-learning concepts, borrowing from mesmerism, believed the sleeping brain was in a uniquely pliable, almost feminine state of suggestibility. Therefore, the voice on the recording was crucial. There had to be a deep, steady, authoritative male voice, the voice of a headmaster or a captain of industry, to properly imprint the knowledge onto the passive mind. A woman's voice would be considered too excitable, and one's own voice would lack the necessary external authority. The academic debate about the origins of sleep-learning, or hypnopedia, is fascinating. While it's most famously associated with 20th-century science fiction, like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, its conceptual seeds were sown here. Historians argue whether these 19th-century ideas were ever taken seriously by the scientific community, or if they remained in the realm of speculative fantasy. Fueled by the breathless marketing of the phonograph companies themselves, was the cerebral imprinter a real if niche product? Or was it the 19th-century equivalent of a late-night infomercial product, promising incredible results with zero effort? The evidence points to it being more of a speculative fancy, but one that perfectly captures the era's boundless faith in technology to re-engineer human nature itself. You imagine it, pinned down, muzzled, then now, your mental sanctuary invaded by the relentless, droning recitation of Latin verse. It's not education, it's an assault. It's the final step in the complete mechanization of your being. You are no longer a person resting. You are a machine being programmed. The sheer mental and physical weight of all these contraptions is suffocating. As your mind reels from this overload, it seeks refuge in the absurd, in the trivial. You think about the men who would subject themselves to this. Men of substance, men of industry, men with magnificent facial hair, in an age so consumed with appearances, with the carefully curated image of the gentleman. Surely there was a device to protect his most glorious facial adornment from the ravages of a restless night. The thought of a relentless, disembodied voice drilling Latin into your sleeping brain is the final straw. It's an invasion of the last private space you have. Your mind, battered by this onslaught of forced productivity, retreats to something more fundamental, something purely aesthetic and, in its own way, just as important to the Victorian psyche. You look at the imaginary portrait of the man who would endure all this, a captain of industry, a man of science, a respectable gentleman, and you focus on his most prominent feature. The very emblem of his patriarchal authority is magnificent, flourishing beard. After all this strapping, Tajan, and programming, what about the whiskers? Your hostess catches your wandering gaze and intuits your thought process with unnerving precision. A gentleman's facial adornment is the very signature of his character, she proclaims, as if quoting from a manual. It speaks of wisdom, virility, and gravitas. To allow it to be crushed and disordered by a common pillow would be a sign of profound negligence. She returns one last time to the wardrobe and produces an object that is both delicate and absurd. It looks like a small, silk-lined birdcage for your chin. This is the nocturnal beard guard, the Fort Knox of facial hair. This is where you dive into the mainstream historical fact of the 19th-century beard movement. For the first half of the century, respectable men in Britain and America were largely clean-shaven, associating facial hair with radicals on bohemians. But around the 1850s, the tide turned dramatically. Beards became not just fashionable, but a powerful symbol of masculinity. The Crimean War played a part. Returning soldiers sported pioneer beards that were seen as heroic. Prince Albert, the beloved consort to Queen Victoria, grew a handsome mustache and sideburns. Soon, almost every man of note, from Charles Dickens to Karl Marx, was heavily bearded. A thick beard was thought to be a natural filter against the polluted city air, or respirator, as some called it, a sign of intellectual depth, and a clear visual marker of male authority in a world where women's roles were beginning to be questioned. This wasn't just a matter of letting hair grow. The maintenance of a fashionable beard was an elaborate daily ritual involving special soaps, combs, brushes, and, most importantly, scented waxes and pomades to sculpt it into the desired shape. This brings us back to the guard. It's not just a simple net. It consists of a lightweight wire frame, shaped to tent over the entire bearded mustache. This frame is lined with soft satin to prevent friction and breakage of the precious hairs. Fine leather straps loop over the ears and buckle at the back of the head, holding the entire apparatus firmly in place. It ensures that no matter how much you might toss and turn, note that you could, in your posture frame, your carefully waxed and coiffed whisker-architecture remains untouched, perfectly preserved for its public debut in the morning. Now for the wonderfully weird, specific detail. The basic model just protects, but the deluxe version, the beard press, does more. Its tiles. Instead of an open cage, this model features a solid, diminished mold, shaped like the inside of a massive walnut shell. Before bed, the gentleman would apply a thick layer of styling wax to his beard, then clamp the two halves of the mold over it. The mold would be selected to match his desired silhouette, the broadened, commanding spade, the slightly fusty mutton-chop, or the intellectual forked style. The device would then hold the beard in this perfect shape all night long, using gentle, consistent pressure to ensure the wax set perfectly. It wasn't just preservation, it was nocturnal sculpture. Historians who look at these kinds of objects see them as fascinating artifacts of gender identity. The academic discussion revolves around what this obsessive male grooming signifies. Was it, as some argue, a way for men to assert their masculinity and tribal identity in a period of rapid social change and burgeoning female emancipation? Or was it simply another expression of the Victorian love for order, classification, and control, turning the male face into yet another surface to be managed and perfected? It's part of the broader performance of being a gentleman, where every detail, from the shine on one's shoes to the curl of one's mustache, was a critical part of maintaining social standing. You reach out and touch the wire frame of the beard guard. It's cold and metallic, another cage, another piece of rigid, unyielding technology applied to a soft, living body. Suddenly, you feel a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature of the metal. It's the cumulative chill of the room. The air is sterile. The sounds are manufactured. The bed is a prison. There is no real, human comfort here. You think of the simple, almost childish pleasure of a warm bed on a cold night. The old-fashioned way involved a servant bringing a heavy ceramic bottle filled with scalding water. It was effective, but messy and prone to leak. Surely, in this age of chemical marvels and explosive progress, they had invented a more modern, more scientific way to generate warmth. The simple, primal need for warmth seems almost out of place in this room of complex solutions to complex anxieties. But when you mention the old-fashioned hot water bottle, your hostess smiles a thin, superior smile. A primitive solution, she says dismissively, inefficient, laborious, and fraught with the danger of scalding. True progress lies not in harnessing brute heat, but in mastering the elegant, silent reactions of chemistry. She reaches under the bed and pulls out a fat, heavy object that looks like a large, metal hot water bottle, but with no stopper, no opening at all. It is completely sealed. This is a perpetual comfort self-activating bed warmer. The mainstream science here taps into the chemical revolution of the 19th century. This was the era when chemists were beginning to understand and control chemical reactions in unprecedented ways. One of the most fascinating discoveries for commercial application was the exothermic reaction, a reaction that releases energy in the form of heat. The principle behind this bed warmer is simple. The sealed metal container holds a supersaturated solution of a chemical salt, most likely sodium acetate, the same substance used in modern reusable hand warmers. The process is a kind of scientific magic trick. During the day, the sealed metal pouch would be placed in a pot of boiling water. This dissolves the crystalline salt inside into a clear liquid, charging it with latent heat. As it cools back to room temperature, it remains in a delicate, unstable liquid state. But the real trick is activating it. Inside the pouch, there is a small, flexible metal disc. When you're ready for bed, you simply bend or click this disc. This tiny mechanical shock creates a nucleation site, a starting point for a chain reaction. The dissolved salt instantly begins to crystallize, releasing its stored energy as a steady, reliable heat. It's a clean, contained, and seemingly miraculous process. No filling, no spilling, no steam, just a click, and the warmth begins to spread through the sheets. Now for the wonderfully ambitious and slightly hazardous specific detail. The basic model provided a few hours of gentle warmth, but for the truly discerning customer, there was the all-night sustained reaction model. This version didn't just contain a simple salt. It contained a more complex mixture of chemicals, often iron filings, carbon, water, and salt, all sealed within the pouch. When exposed to a small amount of air let in by a tiny, single-use valve that was cracked open before bed, the iron would begin to oxidize or rust at a rapid, controlled rate. This oxidation process is also an exothermic reaction, producing a steady heat for 8 hours or more. It was, in essence, a slow, controlled fire without a flame. You were sleeping with a contained, slow-motion chemical reaction at your feet. The main drawback, aside from the potential for leaks of rusty sludge, was that it was a single-use product. Each morning you'd throw away the spent pouch and have to purchase a new one. Planned obsolescence, it seems, is not a modern invention. Historians looking at domestic technologies like this debate their impact on the social structure of the home. Did these scientific conveniences empower the housewife by freeing her from laborious chores, or did they simply raise the standard of expected comfort, creating new tasks and dependencies on commercial products? The self-heating warmer, for instance, eliminates the servant's task of boiling water and filling bottles, which seems liberating. But it also turns a self-sufficient household practice into a commercial transaction. You are no longer warming your own bed. You are buying a disposable heat-pouch from a factory. It's a small but significant step in the transition from the producer home to the consumer home. You touch the cool, smooth surface of the sealed metal pouch. The idea of clicking it and feeling that wave of chemical warmth spread through the cold sheets is undeniably appealing. It's perhaps the first invention you've encountered all night that seems to offer a genuine, uncomplicated improvement on a basic human need. But as you contemplate this small comfort, your mind drifts to the world outside these velvet-curtained windows, a world that was becoming increasingly crowded, chaotic, and dangerous. You think of the rising crime rates in industrial cities like London and New York, the sensational newspaper stories of burglaries and home invasions. In a house so full of valuable objects and people, so obsessed with controlling every aspect of their environment, surely they had an invention to protect them from the ultimate external threat as they slept. A final, definitive line of defense. The thought of a burglar, a chaotic human element, invading this meticulously controlled sanctuary seems like the ultimate violation. The tripwire at the door is designed to catch you, the unconscious resident. But what about a conscious, malicious intruder? Your hostess's expression becomes grim, her usual pride in her domestic technology replaced by a harder, more serious edge. A sad necessity of our times, she says, her voice low. The city grows, and with it, the criminal element. One must take precautions. A simple lock on the door is a deterrent for the casual thief, but for the determined home invader, one requires a more robust solution. She doesn't point to a complex alarm or a reinforced door. She points to the bed itself. It looks like a standard, heavy, woman-poster bed, perhaps a bit more ornate than most, with thick, carved posts under a heavy wooden canopy. But this bed, she explains, is not just a piece of furniture. It is a vault. This is the fortress bed, or, as its patent more dramatically named it, the burglar minus proof descending safety minus chamber. The mainstream historical context here is the rise of urban crime and the corresponding boom in the home security industry in the latter half of the 19th century. As cities swelled with new populations, crime rates, or at least the public's perception and fear of crime, skyrocketed. The gar-rotting panics in London, where pedestrians were attacked and strangled for their valuables, and sensational stories in the penny press about brazen burglaries, created a climate of fear. This led to a huge market for new types of locks, window bars, safes, and personal firearms. Inventors, ever eager to capitalize on public anxiety, turned their attention to the most vulnerable time of all when a family was asleep. The mechanism of the fortress bed is a thing of terrifying ingenuity, a testament to the Victorian love of complex clockwork and mechanics. It's a bed that doubles as an elevator and a cage. The system would be activated before going to sleep, perhaps by a hidden lever or a special key. Once armed, a series of pressure plates or trip wires around the bed would act as a trigger. If an intruder were to step on one of these plates, the trap would spring, in a deafening cacophony of releasing springs, clanging counterweights, and grinding gears. The entire bed, with its sleeping occupants, would be rapidly hoisted upwards, retracting into a specially constructed, steel-lined cavity in the ceiling. As they reached the top, a heavy, iron grille would slam shut beneath it, sealing the occupants safely within their ceiling vault. Simultaneously, some models were designed to ring a series of loud alarm bells throughout the house and even on the exterior of the building, to alert the police and the neighborhood. Now for the bizarre, and frankly terrifying, specific detail. What if the burglar manages to get past the initial triggers? What if they are standing right next to the bed when the trap is sprung? The inventor, a man from Chicago, had thought of that. Some versions of the patent included the option for a non-lethal deterrent. As the bed ascended, a panel in the floor beneath it could open up, dropping the hapless burglar into a net or a padded cell in the basement. A more aggressive and likely apocryphal version of the legend claims some designs included a feature to drop a cage down around the intruder, trapping them on the spot. Its home security as theatrical spectacle. Historians who study these kinds of inventions see them as the ultimate expression of the fortress mentality of the Victorian upper-middle class. Their homes were their castles, insulating them not just from the grime and noise of the city, but from its perceived moral and criminal dangers. An invention like the fortress bed is the literal embodiment of that desire to wall oneself off from the unpredictable world. The academic debate might question its practicality, the cost, the structural modifications required, the sheer noise and terror of its activation, but its symbolic power is undeniable. It's a machine that promises to lift you, literally, above the sordid reality of crime, sealing you in a private, inaccessible heaven while the chaos unfolds below. You stare at the hulking bed, trying to imagine the sheer violence of its ascent. Being woken from a deep sleep by being launched into the ceiling seems almost as terrifying as being woken by a burglar. It's another invention that solves a problem by creating an entirely new kind of trauma. You feel a growing sense of exhaustion from the sheer weight of all this technology. It's like being inside a giant, over-engineered claw. Every gear, every spring, every lever is designed to control, protect, or improve you. You wonder if there's a final frontier, a capstone to all this anxious ingenuity, a single device that tries to unify all these disparate fears and solutions into one grand, overarching system of healthy living. All these devices, each a testament to a specific anxiety, feel like separate, clashing instruments in a discordant orchestra of self-improvement, but the Victorian obsession with systems, with order, with grand, unified theories, couldn't possibly leave them as a mere collection of parts. There had to be a unifying principle, a single piece of furniture that could bring it all together. Your hostess seems to read your mind, a flicker of what looks like genuine pity in her eyes. It can be overwhelming, can't it? Oh, the adjustments, she concedes. But some believe true health is not found in isolated cures, but in total environmental harmony. In aligning the body not with mere mechanics, but with the fundamental forces of the earth itself. She leads you back to the bed, not the terrifying fortress bed, but the one you first entered, with its tensioned posture frame. She directs your attention away from the ad-ons and towards the very structure of the bed itself. The frame, you now notice, isn't made of wood. It's a heavy, ornate construction of cast iron, but it's been painted to look like wood grain. And the entire frame is oriented in a very specific direction, pointing directly from north to south. This isn't just a bed, it's a therapeutic magnetic alignment bed. The mainstream scientific knowledge here is a throwback to the theories of Mesmer and his animal magnetism, but with an updated, more scientific gloss. By the mid-to late 19th century, electricity and magnetism were no longer mystical forces. They were being harnessed by science and industry. This lent a new air of legitimacy to old ideas. Proponents of medical magnetism argued that the human body was essentially an electrochemical machine, full of iron-rich blood and electrical nerve impulses. Therefore, it was susceptible to the influence of magnetic field. The largest magnetic field available, of course, was that of the planet Earth itself. The theory was that many modern ailments, nervousness, poor circulation, insomnia, general fatigue were caused by a disruption of the body's natural magnetic polarity, a disruption caused by the chaotic, unnatural environment of the modern city. The solution was to spend the 8 hours of sleep in the corrective magnetic field. The most basic application was simple: always sleep with your head to the north, feet to the south, aligning your body's current with the Earth's natural flow. This iron bed frame takes it a step further. It's not just oriented correctly, it is a magnet. The cast iron was likely magnetized during its forging process, turning the entire bed into a weak, but permanent magnet. You are, in effect, sleeping inside a giant, therapeutic compass. Now for the wonderfully specific and slightly unhinged detail. Just having a magnetic bed wasn't enough for the true believers. They believed that different ailments required different magnetic orientations. For general lethargy, sleeping north-south was recommended to recharge the body's energy. But for someone suffering from an over-excited nervous condition or high blood pressure, the prescription was the opposite. They were advised to sleep east-west, perpendicular to the Earth's magnetic field, to disperse the excess energy. Deluxe versions of these magnetic beds even came with a large, built-in compass and were mounted on a central pivot with wheels. This allowed the user to rotate their bed to the precise magnetic alignment recommended by their physician for that day's particular complaint. The academic debate around these devices is fascinating. Historians of science and medicine see this is a perfect example of fringe science borrowing the language and aesthetics of mainstream science to sell itself. They used terms like polarity, current, and induction, but applied them in ways that had no basis in actual physics or biology. It highlights a moment when the public's excitement about new technologies far outpaced their understanding of them, creating a fertile ground for pseudoscientific entrepreneurs. It was a way to feel modern and scientific without having to engage with the rigors of actual science. It was, in essence, a placebo made of iron. You look at this magnetized bed, this final, overarching solution designed to cure everything by doing nothing at all. It promises to heal you with invisible forces, to bring your entire being into harmony with the planet. It's a strangely passive end to a journey filled with aggressive, mechanical interventions. The posture frame, the air tent, the alarm clock, the moral cage, all these were active, forceful tools. This bed, by contrast, just is. It is the ultimate expression of faith in a simple, all-minus encompassing, and completely imaginary solution. And as you stand there, contemplating this grand, unified theory of nonsense, you finally understand the logical endpoint. The only thing left to invent is a single machine that does it all. A machine that combines every single one of these terrible ideas into one glorious, unified whole. Your hostess follows your gaze, a look of profound understanding on her face. She sees you've reached the end of the logical chain, the final, inevitable conclusion. You see it, don't you? She whispers, her voice filled with a reverence that is almost religious. The inefficiency of it all. A separate device for posture, another for air, another for the mind. It's chaotic. It's piecemeal. She takes a deep breath, as if about to unveil the crown jewels. The future is not in parts, but in the whole. The solution is not to augment the bed, but to reinvent it entirely. She leads you to the center of the room, to a space you had thought was empty. She pulls a silken cord, and a section of the Persian rug rolls back, revealing a polished brass circle embedded in the floor. With a turn of a key and the pull of a lever, a low hum fills the room, and a monstrous contraption rises silently from the floor below. It is a pod, a fully enclosed, gleaming sarcophagus of brass, polished mahogany, and thick, beveled glass. It is the Integrated Somatic Management System, Model 7. This is it, the grand culmination, the final boss of bad inventions. It is the physical manifestation of every single anxiety you have witnessed tonight, all condensed into one terrifyingly elegant machine. The mainstream idea is simple. This is total sleep management. It takes the human being, with all their messy, unpredictable, organic flaws, and places them into a perfectly controlled, perfectly optimized environment for the duration of their slumber. It is the factory assembly line, but for the human soul. Your hostess opens the heavy, airtight door, revealing a velvet-lined interior. Allow me to demonstrate its features, she says, her voice glowing with pride. The mattress itself has the pH rhenological headrest molded directly into it, and you can see the internal mechanisms of the posture-correcting frame beneath the velvet. It will strap you in automatically. The air you breathe is not the mere purified air of the tent. It is recycled, temperature controlled, and medicinally ionized by the pod's own internal atmospheric generator, which also pipes in the perfectly monotonous sound from the oral regulator. The hypnopedic helmet is no longer a separate device. It descends from the ceiling of the pod, hard-wired into a 10-cylinder phonograph, for a full night's curriculum in law, history, and moral philosophy. The entire pod is, of course, lined with a thick layer of asbestos felt for fire safety. The frame is a massive electromagnet, its polarity adjustable via a handsome brass dial on the interior control panel. For once, the chemical heating system is integrated into the pod's walls, maintaining a precise temperature all night long. Should you begin to snore, a delicate, articulated arm will emerge from a hidden compartment to apply the anti-storing mouthpiece. A second arm holds the beard guard press, ensuring perfect facial hair styling. There are no more messy moral guardian suits. Instead, retractable, padded restraints will deploy at a pre-set time to prevent any unconscious impropriety. And the entire pod functions as the burglar-proof wall. Once the door is sealed, it is impregnable at the designated wake-up time. the entire chamber will tilt, gently decanting you onto a waiting velvet mat. This machine is the subject of a fascinating historical debate because there is no evidence it ever actually existed. It is a phantom, a what-if invention. Some academics believe early sketches for such a device were a form of speculative design, a way of thinking about the future, like an early form of science fiction. Others argue it may have been a satirical creation, a cartoon from a magazine like Punch, mocking the era's obsession with over-minus engineering. It represents the point where the Victorian dream of a perfectly ordered life becomes a self-evident nightmare. It's the moment the quest for control becomes total imprisonment, a machine that promises a perfect life by removing the act of living itself. It is a beautiful, handcrafted, perfectly useless coffin that you enter into willingly. Every single night, in the pursuit of progress, you look at the gleaming part, the culmination of a journey through a landscape of fear. Fear of bad air, bad thoughts, bad posture, bad morals, bad noises, and bad people, and in its silent, humming presence, you feel a profound and overwhelming sense of weariness. The journey is over. There is nothing left to invent, nothing left to fear. There is only this machine, and the promise of a sleep, so deep and so controlled, it might as well be the end of everything. The room around you begins to soften. The hard, metallic edges of the machines blur and fade, their brassy gleam dissolving into a gentle, golden light. The insistent hum of the magnetic coils and vibrating cushions recedes, replaced by a low, distant whisper, like wind moving through a field of tall, soft grass. All the anxieties, the striving, the relentless need for correction and improvement, they all just seem to melt away. The weight of the posture frame lifts, not just from your body, but from your mind. The stuffy air of the purity tent expands into an infinite, clean space, cool and calm against your skin. You feel a sense of gentle, effortless drifting. You are no longer standing in that strange Victorian room. You are floating in a place of quiet, a place between worlds. The voice of your hostess, once so crisp and certain, is now just a faint echo. A story you once heard but can no longer quite remember the details of. The beard guards and the alarm clocks and the safety coffins. They shrink, becoming tiny, forgotten toys in the vast, quiet landscape of your mind. They were just shapes in the dark, weren't they? And now the darkness is soft and welcoming, a velvet blanket wrapping around you. You can let go now. There are no rules here, no postures to maintain, no lessons to learn, no snores to suppress. There is only the slow, easy rhythm of your own breathing, a gentle tide pulling you further and further out into a calm, silent sea. The journey is over. Let the deep, quiet darkness cradle you. Let it all go.